Hello and welcome to another Stamp with Amy K Facebook Live. And today I'm going to show you how I made a Christmas card with the Welcoming Woods stamp set. So this is the card that we're going to be making today. I did use one of the background stamps, which is the Birch Stamp. And then the sentiment came from a different stamp set, just because I wanted a little different look on this one that I did the sentiment. Basically, I was going for a sketch challenge that this one kind of mirrors, and it needed to be a little bit bigger of a sentiment. So that is why I picked the one that I did. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you're hopping in, I just realized, sorry, I listened to myself and I didn't want to be doing that. So I appreciate y'all joining me today, and thanks so much for hopping in. And if you're here live, feel free to say hello. I see Bree is here, so thanks so much for joining. And you just ordered the set today. Good. I'm glad you're going to love it. It's a lot of fun to play with. So this is the card we're making, and again, this is the Welcoming Woods stamp set. This is one from the current mini catalog. It's got those really pretty trees in it, some little leaves, and the snowflake images, and then this is like a kind of almost a mirror image that you can make it look like water or snow or ground or whatever around the trees if you want to use that. And then it's got some really good sentiments. Again, kind of a wide variety, something you can use for almost anything, fall, winter related, birthdays, Christmas, congratulations, just a hello card, a thank you card. So lots and lots of good things that are in this stamp set. Hey, Julie and Vicky and Elise, I'm glad you're here as well. And one of the other stamp sets that I used is the Merry Snowflakes, and I actually used the entire bundle. So we've got the stitched snowflakes dies, and I actually used that little snowflake on my card front. And then this is the Merry Snowflakes stamp set. Again, these are bundled together in the mini catalog, and you get a 10% discount if you buy the bundle together. And I used the sentiments, actually a couple of them from this stamp set, which is a really good one as well. And it's got the pretty stitched snowflake dies that go with it. And then the final stamp set, I know I used a lot of stamp sets on this, is the Birch Stamp Set. And this is one of the background stamps from Stampin' Up! That's in the current annual catalog. So again, this is another one of those that's a good one that I use an awful lot for backgrounds. And again, it's a good kind of nature-looking stamp set. I did use a couple different dies on this one. So I used, again, the Picture This dies. I don't know why I've been reaching for them a lot lately. I guess there are a lot of good shapes in here. So I did use the center section of the Picture This dies, and that's what I cut out the sentiment on the card front with. And then I also used the Painted Labels dies. Again, this is one of those die sets from the annual catalog. And I just used this little scalloped piece. Just wanted a little something peeking out from underneath the sentiment. So I die cut a little piece of cardstock with that die. All right. One thing I wanted to remind you about, I guess I better do this before, is that the Stampin' Up! Has got their Love Santa tag kit that is available now. It makes 12 tags, and they're really cute. And if you looked on my blog, which is stampwithamyk.com, yesterday I shared some cards. I actually switched the tags up, and I made the tags just like they said to in the kit, and then I added them on card fronts. They're a big tag, and it covered almost the entire card front. So a very good fun tag set. And then there are the Love Santa treat bags that you can get that coordinate with it. There are 12 treat bags, and there are 3 each of 4 different designs, and they're food safe bags. So for all your kind of goodies that you want to give away at Christmas, you can make a cute tag, get a cute bag, and coordinate the two together. And there is actually, I noticed out on the Stampin' Up! Website, a bundle of the tag kit and the little bags together in a bundle. So just be aware that you can buy them individually, or you can buy them grouped together if you would prefer to do that. So hey, Bonnie, thanks. I appreciate that. All right, let's get going on the card before I start talking and forget what I'm talking about. So, okay, so the Birch Stamp Set. When I use the background stamps, I don't know about you, but that big giant block that Stampin' Up! Has, I have a really hard time using it, and I kind of fumble around with it. I find the Stamparatus is like Stamparatus to the rescue when I'm using background images. So the way that I set mine up is I cut a piece of cardstock that is oversized. This one is, I think it's about 4.5 by about 5 3/4, maybe a hair bigger than that, I don't know exactly, but definitely it's an oversized piece of cardstock. And I take that and I tuck it up in the corner, again, so that it's stuck up in the corner as far as it'll go, so that I don't have to worry about trying to put magnets on it. So if I get a bad image the first time around, I make sure that I put the paper way up in the corner. And actually, I was going to stamp this off, so we'll do that in a second. And then I take my the image that I'm going to stamp with and tuck that way up in the corner as well, and then flip the stamparatus closed and pick it up with the lid or the plate on the stamparatus. So that is how I set up my background stamps. Is I cut out an oversized piece of cardstock and then trim it down, because for me that's a lot easier than either A, fumbling with that big block and hoping that you get it in the right spot, or B, putting it here somewhere in the middle and again hoping that it stays and you don't have to restamp it and all that sort of thing. So the little trimmings on the edge, I figure I can spare that that tiny amount of cardstock. So I've got Sahara Sand ink, and I'm going to ink up and hopefully not bounce the camera around too much. Ink up the Birch background stamp, and hopefully once I get ink all over it, then I think we're good. I'm going to close up my ink pad so hopefully I don't stick my fingers in it. And then I'm actually going to take it, we have grid paper for the stamparatus, and I'm just going to stamp it on the grid paper the first time because I want the stamped off. It was a little too dark when I did it full strength with the Sahara Sand cardstock. So I'm just going to take my cardstock and again slide it all the way up into the corner, and again it's an oversized piece, so I will be trimming it down. And then I'm going to stamp it with the stamparatus right over the top. Hey Karen and Barbara, thanks for hopping in today. So that is my, that's definitely my go-to tip for the background stamps because I struggle with them. All right, and then we got a pretty decent image. And as you can see, there's a little kind of blank spot along the edge, but that's okay. That's why I do the oversized piece of cardstock, because I just trim it down then and make sure that I take that part right off the edge with my trimmer. All right, so I'm going to pull out the trimmer here, and we are going to trim this down to fit on a card front. So I need it to be 4 1/4. So I'll trim that edge off by 5 1/2. So again, I want to make sure that I'm not cutting it less than 5 1/2. So I'm going to trim a little off the top and a little off the bottom on this one. All right, flip it around. There's my 5 1/2. And trim off the bottom. And we should have one, if I've measured it correctly and cut correctly, I should have a piece of cardstock that fits perfectly onto the card front, which I'm checking it to make sure before I start gluing it. And it looks like I've got one that actually fits. So yay, I did everything correctly. So, oh, Karen, you struggle with the stamp sets as well, the big, that big block and the background ones. I don't know, the stamparatus is a lifesaver for me on those, definitely. Hey Penny, I'm glad you're here, and Jerry as well. Thanks for joining today. So I'm using multi-purpose liquid glue. Just going to put that right around the edge here and a little bit in the middle to adhere. This is a thick basic white card base, and this is one that's your standard book fold card base. So it's cut to 5 1/2 by 8 1/2 and scored at 4 1/4. And I'm adhering this to the card front, and I usually use liquid glue when I'm doing that sort of a gluing project, just because I want to have that little bit of wiggle room to make sure I have everything stuck on straight before I have it stuck on permanently. My original card base is a 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5 1/2, so it's a top fold card, but this card project will work with the card base either way. So, all right, next up I have got a piece. This is, I think I cut it to about 3 1/2 by 4 1/2, piece of basic white cardstock, and I'm going to take, hopefully, there it is, my the little snowflake image from the Welcoming Woods stamp set and some Versamark ink. Hey Nancy, thanks for joining, and Carol's here as well. I appreciate you being here. So I'm going to take that little stamp set, or the little stamped image, the little snowflakes, and just going to kind of randomly stamp it across, and hopefully I can see pretty well where I've stamped at. I'm sure you can't see at all where I've stamped at, but I think I can. Just sort of randomly stamp it across the little cardstock panel. Again, this is basic white cardstock, cut to about 3 1/2 by about 4 1/2. And again, we are going to be trimming this down, so the exact size doesn't necessarily matter that much. I'm going to be using clear embossing powder from the Basics embossing powders, and we're going to heat emboss those little snowflakes on here. And it looks like we got them pretty well all the way across, so that was what I was making sure that I had done before I put everything away. I'm going to close up my embossing powder and try not to get that everywhere. So I'm going to turn on the heat tool and let that heat up a second. So Stampin' Up's heat tool has 2 settings on it. There's a level 1 setting for drying. So if you're going to do watercoloring or something like that where you need a little bit of hurry up on it to try to get the paper to dry quickly, you can use the level 1 setting. The level 2 setting is for heat embossing, which is what we are going to be doing here. So I'm just getting it heated up a little bit so it's ready to go, and hopefully we'll start the heat embossing quickly. All right, the clear embossing powder, I know you're not going to get like the magical that you can usually see when it's embossing on screen, but hopefully you can see that it's turning smooth and shiny as I'm going across the paper, and if you can't, you'll be able to see it in a second, I promise, when we start putting some ink on the paper. All right, you just want to make sure that everything is embossed well. All right, turn off the heat tool. Then I'm going to grab my blending brush, which is one of my favorite things, and give this just a little shake over here to make sure that I'm good and cooled off, because I don't want to smear those snowflakes that I've just stamped. You've never tried heat embossing, Bonnie? We needed to do that. It's so easy and so fun, and it's like, it's such a cool thing to do. So I have found Post-it note tape I've got here, and I found, thanks to many of you who listened to me carry on and say that I was sure that the Post-it note people had taken away their Post-it note tape, and I was sad about that. You all pointed out that I was way wrong, and it actually is on Amazon. And so they have not taken it away. They've just completely changed the packaging on it, so it looked a lot different than the last time I ordered it, so I did not think it was the same thing, but it in fact is, so yay for that. So I've taken a little bit of Post-it note tape and I'm sticking it across the bottom of my little image here, and again it tears differently every time, so this one had a little dip in the middle, this one's going to go up a little bit and a little dip on the edge, but it's all good. It's just kind of a matter of making sure that you get a Post-it note so that it's not exactly straight if that's not the look you want. If you want a straight edge on it for your little snowy hill, that is just fine. You can do that. But I thought the torn look added kind of a nice little, looked a little more like real snow to me. And I've got Misty Moonlight ink and a blending brush. So, hey Donna, I'm glad that you're here as a first-time viewer. All right, and you're in Bridgewater. Awesome. So, yeah, definitely let me know if you have questions about anything. I'd be happy to chat with you more about it. So I'm going to be taking, again, Misty Moonlight ink here and just adding it to this panel of basic white cardstock. And hopefully you'll start to see the snowflakes showing up a little bit here as I do this. With my blending brushes, I usually tend to go off the paper first. So I get the ink on it, go over off the paper, and then come back to my main project, just because sometimes you get a little bit of a dark glob that you may not necessarily love the look of if you go straight from the ink pad to your paper. A lot of times the really lighter colors, it doesn't seem to be such a big issue for me, but the darker colors, the blues and the deep purples and the dark greens and dark reds and that sort of thing, definitely for me, I like to go to my grid paper first and do a little kind of test splotch to make sure that I'm good to go and I'm not going to get a dark glob of ink somewhere that I don't want it. All right, just kind of trying to finish out around the edges here with the blending brush, adding a little more ink to the middle. And I'm going to come in with a darker Night of Navy in a second to go around the very edges of it, so I don't need to worry about getting this all the way out and making sure it's a deep dark cover out there. I just want to make sure that it kind of will blend in a little bit once the Night of Navy goes on. So, hey Karen, thanks for joining today. I'm glad you're here. All right, Night of Navy is the next one, and I am using the same blending brush. You can get out another one if you want to. I usually, if I'm using a very similar color, which these two are pretty close in color, I usually just use the same one. Because, who wants to get out another blending brush and get it dirty and then have to clean out another one? But yeah, that's the lazy Amy talking. But you definitely can get a different one. On the blending brushes, just so you know, you do not have to have one for every single color. You can just do, I don't know, I'm finding that 2 sets of them seem to be working well for me. That gives me enough that when I'm doing blending, I've got enough different brushes that I can use the colors that I want to, but I definitely don't feel like I need to have one for every single color. Now you certainly can, and if you want to get one for every color, be my guest. I would never tell you not to buy something, but if you're, wanting to conserve a little bit on something and trying to figure out exactly how many of these you need, I would recommend starting with 2 packs of them and then see where you are from there. And if you feel like that's working for you, then stick with the 2. And if you feel like you need a few more, well, you can always buy more. So, all right, and again, I'm using Night of Navy ink around the edge to give it a little bit darker look. So, Blending brushes are definitely fun. They are one of my very favorite tools ever. And I've had another set for quite a while. The ones that I was using are definitely a different feel to them. They're much more like a paintbrush. I like these because they're wider and flatter. The ones that I was using were a long kind of paintbrushy type, and I just don't like them as well. I like these a lot better. So, all right, I think we're good on that. Then I'm going to come in with the tree stamp and early espresso ink, and I'm going to ink up the little tree image here. Again, this is from the Welcoming Woods Stamp Set, and I'm just inking it in early espresso ink. This is another one of those images that if you wanted to put it on the Stamparatus and stamp it, you definitely can. Although I should be knocking on everything wooden. I've been able to get pretty good images with it without using the Stamparatus, so I feel like I'm, feeling a little, I don't know, a little wild, I guess, and I'm going to try it without the Stamparatus. So there we go. It's down on the paper. Let's hope I get it lined up reasonably. And I wanted to make sure that my trees were all grounded in the snow. That was sort of the one thing that I was looking at as I was trying to line it up. I hope that little guy is deep enough in the snow that he's actually going to look like he's grounded and not floating in the air, but we shall see. I think he's pretty close. He's floating a little bit today. All right. So then I'm going to take off my little mask that I made with a Post-it note. I'm going to carefully and slowly peel that off so I don't rip my cardstock. And then that's basically, kind of the background image for it. I do find that if I take a paper towel and kind of dab the ink, and I'll kind of swirl it a little bit more, the darker inks do tend to stick to the embossing powders a little bit. So you may get a little bit of kind of a darker shadow on it, but usually if you come in with a paper towel and then kind of rub over it, you can get the majority of the ink off so that it works and looks good on your card front. So again, I try to dab it off first and get the kind of the big chunks of ink off, and then come back in and sort of rub over it lightly with the paper towel to remove as much of the rest of the ink as I can. I have seen some techniques in the past where they actually take it and rub the embossing powder all the way off. That's not something I've tried before, but definitely I know that you can do that. So if you actually wanted to take the embossing powder all the way off, you can really rub it with the paper towel and basically remove almost all the embossing powder. I kind of like the shiny look of the embossing powder, so I tend to try not to rub it off and just take off the ink, as much of it as I can instead. All right, so that is it for the kind of the background, the little snowflakes and things. Now I'm going to trim this down as well. So I've got my trimmer over here. And again, I intentionally did this a little bit oversized just because my final project, I knew I was going to be trimming off the edges. So I didn't want to have like a harsh line of the, anything on the edge, I guess. I didn't want it to look like it was blended on one side and not on the other. And anyway, so that was kind of why I did it the way I did it. And I want the final product to be 3 inches by 4 inches. So I'm cutting here and trimming off at the 3-inch point, and then I'm going to find the 4-inch line, and we'll trim that off here at 4 inches. All right, so that's the final result. Then the next thing you do is you chop this up, and it does take me a moment sometimes when I've done a project and I'm like, oh, it's so pretty, but then you put it in the trimmer and you're like, oh, I'm going to cut my project all up. So I'm sliding it over to the 1-inch mark here, and I'm going to chop it into 1-inch by 4-inch sections. So that is going to be the main card front. The focal card front is going to be 1 inches by 4 inches. And so that's it. The only, and it's not even difficult part of this, is as you're assembling the card front, you just want to make sure that you kind of have your trees in the right order. I don't know that it really, really matters, but I try to keep them in the right order so that they, it looks like kind of a whole scene across, as opposed to, chopped up trees stuck sort of willy-nilly on the card front. So, all right, let me grab, I did quite a bit of cutting ahead of time for the remainder of the card, except I totally cut that one to the wrong size. But we can fix it. It's not a problem. I've done this before. I'm sort of what I think I would call myself a card making professional, but not really. All right, so we're going to use Stamp and Seal. And I have, these are supposed to be cut to 4 1/8 by 1 1/8. So it should be 1/8 of an inch taller and wider than what I have done. But as I said, I've totally cut one to the wrong size, so I will show you quickly how you can fix that should you do that same thing. So use your two side ones, the full pieces on the two side ones, and the middle one is the one we're going to chop up. So I've cut this too short, so what I want to do is make sure that I have enough on the bottom that it's going to fit, and I'm going to chop it right in here. Chop this piece of cardstock in half. We're going to slide it apart, and if I do it correctly, nobody's going to know that I've done it, except you and me will know that I screwed up on it. So I'm going to take that piece of cardstock and I'm going to adhere it to the top. See, it's a good thing I screw all this up so that I can show you all these little fixes when I'm stamping, because I do mess a lot of things up. And that's how I learned to do all the fixes, is by messing up enough things. Then I know how to fix it. So, all right, let me make sure I'm putting the straight edge at the bottom and not the one that I hacked up. All right, so we're going to take that and adhere it on like that. And again, you'll see the gap here, but when we stick it to the card front and layer the sentiment over the top of it, nobody's going to know that it's there. So, oh, thanks, Diane. You showed up just in time for me to mess something up, which is, you know, I do that a lot. So, all right, so let me go ahead and adhere this to the card front. I'm going to try to aim for the middle here. So I want to 10, there we go. Okay. Try to put it in a spot where you can see and where I can see what the middle is. So I've lined it up on my grid paper, and I'm trying to, again, just visualize what will be straight and what will be in the middle of it. And I'm going to lay it down. I'm not going to smoosh it down really hard yet until I know that things are going to line up the way that I want them to line up, and that I've got it on here fairly straight. So again, I'm just going to set this on here for the moment and then do the final one. And I can do any kind of little adjustment that I need to, if I need to go up or down a little bit on anything, or slide things over at all. All right, I think I need to go up just a hair on this one, maybe just a hair on that one. And looking at it through the screen, and it looks like it's fairly straight, so I think we're going to go ahead and press down and call that good. All right, so that's most of the card front. That's the difficult part of the card front, is getting it stamped and then giving yourself permission to chop it up. So, all right. Next up, I did a little bit of, actually, I cut this ahead of time, and I know that you can't see it, but I can feel it on here. This is the wintry snow, I think, or snowy white, I think is what it is, velvet paper from the mini catalog. And again, I can feel that it's velvet. I know that you can't see that it is, but trust me, it is, and it's really pretty. And to cut a snowflake with the Stitched Snowflakes dies. And I'm just going to use a little bit of liquid glue, a couple little dabs of that here and there on this to adhere that to the card front. And again, I'm just going to take it and kind of place it up here in the trees a little bit. Try to get it so that it's not too low down that it's all covered by the sentiment, but not too high up that it's covering the whole card front either. All right, and we will set that aside while I do a little bit more stamping. I've got the sentiment from the Merry Snowflake Stamp Set, and I'm going to stamp that in real red ink on a piece of basic white cardstock. So, hey, Linda, glad you're here. Came in just in time, or just while you were fixing lunch to watch me fix fix one of my goofs. So, hey, Terry, I'm glad you're here as well. So, from Arizona, thanks for hopping in and saying hello. And I appreciate that, Linda. All right, so I'm stamping this again just on a piece of basic white cardstock. And I think we got a pretty good image on that one. And then I'm going to take the center little die here from the rectangle die, using the center piece of it is what I'm trying to say, from the Picture This dies. And I'm going to take this over to my die cutting machine and run it through the die cutting machine and cut just this little center piece out. So I'll be off screen for 1 second. Hopefully y'all are enjoying your Tuesday. But again, been a beautiful day here. Started off not so awesome. The dog got sick in the middle of the night last night, so you know that's never a fun thing. But we survived, so did she. I don't know what she ate, but something that definitely did not agree with her tummy. But she survived. All right, so we've got our little die cut sentiment. And again, ahead of time, I used the scallop die from the Painted Labels dies, which is that one. And I cut a piece of real red cardstock with that. And we're just going to adhere it to the back of the sentiment. I'm using a little Stampin' Seal. and I'm going to put it sort of just along the bottom edge here. And it doesn't need to be completely covered or, you know, really careful, huge pile of adhesive on there, because it's a very lightweight piece of cardstock that we're sticking on. And we're going to put some Stampin' Dimensionals over the top of it too. I did intentionally put it off-centered. Hopefully you can see that on here on the screen. So I didn't do that, you know, it wasn't a mistake. It was my intention to have it be off-centered. Hopefully it looks like that. So when I do stuff off-centered, I try to make it be really off-centered so that you don't sit there and go, was that just crooked, or did she mean to do that? So I meant to do that. All right, using a couple little Stampin' Dimensionals to adhere the sentiment to the card front. And then we'll add a couple of gems and we'll be done with the card front. So pretty simple so far. All right, and again, I want to make sure that I've got my gap covered here and that I'm fairly even between the two. And I probably should have moved my snowflake up just a little bit further, but that's okay. It still peeks out, I think, and looks all right from there. I did add a couple of red rhinestone basic jewels, just added 3 of them sort of here around the card front. Stuck one on the sentiment, one over here off the kind of the edge of the snowflake, and then one more down a little bit in the snow. Trying to do my groups of 3 thing, because I guess that's what, you know, artsy people do. All right, and that's it for the card front. So super simple, and I love the tree image. I love the snow. I love the blending brushes to add a little bit of color to the paper, and it's so easy to do. So, all right, on the inside of the card, again, kept it pretty simple, and I've got basic white cardstock, and I'm going to use Misty Moonlight and Real Red inks, and we're going to do a little stamping. The sentiment is from the Merry Snowflake Stamp Set, and making sure that I'm putting it on here the right way around. And hopefully we'll get it on here straight. If not, we'll flip it over and do it again. All right, I think that's, I don't know, it's reasonably straight. And then got Misty Moonlight ink and one of the snowflake images from the Merry Snowflake Stamp Set. And we're just going to stamp that a couple of times here in Misty Moonlight ink around the sentiment. And then we're going to be all done with the card. All right. I'm going to adhere it to the inside of the card base with a little bit of Stampin' Seal. I'm going to give this 1 second to dry a little bit while I put the adhesive actually on the inside of the card base instead of on the back, since I'm letting that dry for a second. Normally I flip it over and do it the other way around, but you can add it to the inside of the card base because generally you know about how big it's going to be. It covers most of the inside of the card. Then we are going to adhere the 2 together and we'll be all done. So, all right. That's it for the inside of the card. So let me fold it closed and do a quick little crease down the edge here with the bone folder. Try not to run it off too much. All right, so there we go. That's it. So this is my sample card that I made ahead of time. This is the one we made here today, even with my goof on it. We still got it done and got it put together. So you definitely need to get this set, Nancy. You're going to love it. So thank you all for the nice comments. I appreciate you being here today and joining me and watching me flub up again and laughing with me as I do it. So I will plan to be live on my YouTube channel around 2 o'clock Eastern Time on Friday, and then back here again live on Facebook around 2 o'clock Eastern Time next week, Tuesday. So have a great rest of your day, and we will chat soon. Oh, one other thing. I will be posting a link to the video tomorrow, or to the blog post tomorrow morning. It'll go live around 8 o'clock Eastern Time. So if you have questions about the cardstock cuts or anything like that, you'll be able to find them all out on my blog post tomorrow. And again, I'll link it up and add it in the description of the video. So thanks again for joining. We'll chat soon.